The show showcases Jaskier, who was accompanying Geralt, a witcher, as they were tracking down a monster called Alamarax. Jaskier proved to be a distraction on the way, and as Geralt steps on a pile of rock, Alamarax gushed out from it and launched an all-out attack. The monster was about striking Jaskier when Geralt stopped it and engaged in a huge confrontation with Alamarax. The battle was intense as Geralt threw all he got at the monster as he unleashed a series of scourging flames on the monster, but it seemed to have little to no effect. Geralt was finally able to pin Alamarax by icing the water with his magic, restraining the monster's leg. He was about to kill it when he spotted some mare persons hiding. The mare people came out from hiding and begs Geralt to have mercy, but Geralt explained that he was paid by pearl divers to kill him. The mare people explained to him that Alamarax's only crime was consuming oysters that produce pearls, which was his food, and has never killed anyone. Geralt, on hearing this, halted, put out his sword, and left the scene. The mare people and sea creatures were in a hall with the king and queen as they lay out their complaints about the ill actions of humans, especially pearl divers, as they wanted to launch an attack on humans, but the king and queen stated they are allies with humans, and they're considering breaking the alliance when the princess objected and opted for peace as she was in love with the human prince. Melusina was in support of the princess, her nephew, but her sister, Dahad. The queen didn't want anything to do with her because of her jealousy and ordered her out. Jaskier and Geralt were in a bar as Jaskier exerted his frustration at Geralt because he didn't kill the Alamarax because of a moral code he follows, and now they didn't have any cash to purchase a good meal. Jaskier was angry about moving to Bremervoord, the shitty town, while Geralt thought of Yennefer, his lover, and the pleasant experiences he had with her. The flashback was over as a cheap bread was presented to Jaskier, but it wasn't edible, so he proposed a deal to Geralt that they both accept the first job given to them from now on, without following any moral code. They were still at it when the barman began making fun of Geralt because he doesn't kill monsters, and he and Jaskier were thrown out of the bar. There, someone offered Jaskier a gig to perform in the royal banquet as he was a poet. They arrived at the banquet as Jaskier thought he was going to be the main attraction, but the host broke it to him that he was just a sideshow. Essie met Jaskier at the banquet as they were childhood friends, and Jaskier introduced her to Geralt. And as they engaged in a conversation, Geralt found out that Jaskier was actually from Bremervoord. They were still at it when Jaskier had a flashback when he was a little boy and was bullied by the king bastard's son, Zealist, as the other kids laughed at him. Essie came to his rescue as she defends Jaskier and taught Zealist a lesson. The flashback was over as the king Usfult and his son, Prince Englova, arrived at the banquet. Commander Zealist also appeared to be present at the event. They were side talks among the people at the event as Essie explained to them about divers going missing in the last few days, and the royals aren't talking about it because Prince Englova was in love with the mare princess. Meanwhile, some divers arrived at the boats with a lot of oyster shells and began breaking them one after the other, in search of pearls, but didn't find any. After a while, they finally found a pearl, and were happy about it when they got attacked and were all slaughtered mercilessly. Geralt went out to breathe some fresh air when Essie met with him as she discussed Jaskier, stating how his ballads were inspired by Geralt's Witcher adventures. Geralt tried flirting with her, but he appears to be bad at it when Jaskier came around as he had just finished performing and giving a standing ovation, so it was now Essie's turn to perform as she went back to the banquet. Essie began performing, and she was good at it, but Jaskier realized it was his ballads, so he joined her in the performance. They were still performing as Commander Zealist discussed with the others about how Prince Englova's love for the mare princess had put them all at risk. Geralt interrupted them, and while they were still speaking, Princess Nispin of Maribor arrived looking majestic with gifts for Prince Englova. They were still at it when one of the divers rushed into the banquet soaked in his own blood, as he stated it was the Vodnik, a creature that attacked and killed them. The king couldn't fold his arms anymore as both the king and Prince Englova ordered Geralt to take care of the monster. Geralt didn't want to, but Jaskier reminded him of their deal, so he reluctantly agreed as Jaskier and Geralt ventured out. Geralt appeared to be dreaming about Essie, but she wasn't really Essie as she transformed to the witch Yennefer. They were having pleasant experiences together when Yennefer quickly ordered him to wake up, and as he did, he barely dodged the attack by a Vodnik that ambushed him. He and the Vodnik got into a huge fight as it appeared to be so powerful, so Geralt drank an elixir, which transformed him, grants him enough strength as he launched a brutal attack on the Vodnik, slicing one of his arms. The Vodnik distracted him and fled, but Geralt didn't chase it. Jaskier had just woken up as he was asleep throughout the fight as Geralt explained what happened on the way. He bashed Geralt for not chasing and killing the monster, but Geralt explained that he was tracing the Vodnik blood back to their den, and that was why he let it leave. Geralt heard a sound, and upon investigating, he realized Essie had been following them as she was frustrated with the happenings in her town and would like to do something about it. Geralt stated if she wanted to do something, she should get them boats, but she informed them that the tides were low and they could walk to Dragonfang, where the Vodnik are. Back at the castle, the king tried convincing his son Prince Englova to think about his people and bury his feelings for the mare princess as the people are in war with the mare folks. But the prince wouldn't listen, and as he left, the king bastard's son, Zealist, came around. Zealist had a huge disdain for the merfolks, and the king liked that about him, as he wished Zealist was his full-blooded son. Prince Aglovil and the Mare Princess were hanging out at Dragonfang as they discussed about their people's hatred for each other, but it didn't stop their love. They were still discussing when the Mare Princess spotted the Witcher with humans, and decides to go report it. The Witcher, on the other hand, spotted the Vodnik and pinned him down, trying to find out who sent him to attack, but before he could say a word, the Vodnik was struck by a spear sent by Zealist, who appeared to have arrived on a ship to take out the creatures. The Vodniks approached the ship and engaged in a battle with the humans. The Mare people also arrived at that moment and joined the Vodnik against the humans. The Mare Princess cousin was hurt in the process, and while the Witcher tried breaking up the fight, one of the Vodnik grabbed Essie, sending her deep into the water in an attempt to drown her, but luckily for her, Geralt appeared just in time to save her. Geralt was able to break up the fight, and Zealist left as he promised to report Geralt to the king. The Mare Princess cousin was in critical situation, and as the princess tried to heal him, the queen blamed her for hanging out with a human who could betray her at any moment. The princess was unable to save her cousin, and he died at the spot. The tides were coming back on, so Essie led them to safety as she knows the way. They all discussed as Essie suspected the queen of sending the Vodniks towards the divers, and also Geralt, while Jaskier says that people blame the Mare Princess and Prince Aglovil for what was happening, so Essie suggested they meet them at Founder's Rock in the morning to hear from the horse's mouth. In the morning, they were wandering on Founder's Rock when Essie spotted them and called the others as the Witcher approached the Mare Princess, speaking the Mare language. After discussing for a while, the Witcher confronted the princess about the attack, and also while she left, on noticing them earlier. This led to a fight between the prince and the princess as she left angrily. Zealist picked Essie cousin out of spite for Essie, as he was 15, and can be recruited in the army by law, as they were preparing for a great war. Meanwhile, the Vodnik were also in preparation for battle. The Mare Princess was still in love with the prince as she met with her Aunt Melusina, who proposed a solution for her by giving her a potion which would transform her to a human form so she could be with the prince. The Mare Princess, Shenaz, was reluctant to take the potion, so Melusina advised her to keep it as it might be of use later on, and the princess left with it. Geralt, Essie, and Jaskier were investigating the diver's death, as Geralt soon realized that the Vodnik were not responsible for the attack but a Mare person. A royal one at that, as a royal necklace was found at the scene. The Witcher and his friends approached the king in the castle, and spotted the prince, who was already falling for Princess Nispin of Maribor. Geralt explained to the king how the Vodnik weren't responsible for the attack, that it was done by a shape-shifting mermaid, and acted as if it was the Vodnik who did it, leaving behind the royal necklace to implicate the Mare Queen. The Witcher knew that the only mermaid with shape-shifting power was Melusina, and fished her out as she was disguised as Princess Nispin, and she engaged in a battle with the Witcher before escaping. It turns out the king allied with Melusina, as she was ordered by the king to kill divers so his son, Aglovil, would hate the Mare folks, and ended the relationship with the Mare Princess. The prince confronted his father about it, and left the scene. Commander Zealist was also disgusted by his father's action, and refused to lead the army in battle, as the king ordered his arrest alongside the Witcher and Jaskier. Meanwhile, the war was about to begin as the ship were prepared and ready to set sail. Essie met with Prince Aglovil, as he explains to her that the Witcher and the others stood up to his father, so they will be put to death. So, Essie spoke to him, and tried convincing him to do something about it, and not be a coward. They were tied up as the king knew Geralt didn't feel pain, but the king still wanted to hurt him by making him watch his friends die, so the king led Zealist and Jaskier to the river to drown, but Zealist launched an attack on the soldiers as Jaskier and Geralt joined him in the attack. They were outnumbered when Princess Shenaz arrived with her forces to help them, as Geralt explained the king's ordeal with Melusina, the sea witch. They were still at it when Melusina arrived with her soldiers, as she shapeshifted into a large kraken, and told her soldiers to take care of the Witcher while she takes care of the princess. The battle was intense as Jaskier was about falling to his doom when Zealist saved him, but couldn't save himself as he was grabbed by the sea witch and torn apart. The sea witch grabbed Princess Shenaz and explained to her the reason while she did all this was because her mother the queen stole her love from her. It turns out the sea witch and the king were once in love, but the king love faded as she couldn't bear a child, so the king married her sister who conceived the princess. Prince Aglovil arrived at that moment to help the princess, but he couldn't stand the monsters, so his father came to his aid and pushed him to a boat below. The princess was about getting torn apart when the Witcher intervened, slicing off one of the witch limbs as the princess fell onto the ship. While trying to crawl to the water, the king stopped her and sliced part of her tail so she wouldn't be able to swing as he sends her into the sea. Meanwhile, Geralt spotted Essie as one of Vodnik grabbed her, and as he rushed to her, Essie cut her hair, freeing herself as the Vodnik was crushed by Geralt's magic. Geralt was still in a battle with the sea witch as Essie tossed him his sword with the potion, and he ventured into the witch mouth. There he tore the witch from the inside out as her intestines gushed out, releasing swallowed merfolk. The sea witch was hurt as the Witcher was stronger as he drank the potion and stabbed the witch's heart, killing her in the process. The battle was over as Geralt, Essie, and Jaskier were reunited, and as Prince Aglovell spotted his father hanging on a branch, he saved him. The prince sought for the princess. It appeared she was still alive as her mother healed her, so the prince addressed the soldiers telling them that the merfolks were not their enemy, but they were deceived to go into battle, and with this, the war was over. The king apologized to his son for his ways. That's when his son broke it to him that he will be getting married to Princess Shinaz, and she will be taking the portion which would transform her to a human. On hearing this, his father was in support because if she turns to a human, his race will continue. The wedding day had come. His guest arrived awaiting the princess. The princess arrived with her parents and the people, and as Prince Aglovell went to welcome her. It turns out Prince Aglovell tricked his father, as it turns out he was the one taking the portion, and as he drank it, he transformed to a mere person and left with the princess and her people, leaving the king disappointed. At night, Jaskier was asleep as Essie and Geralt had a romantic encounter and slept with each other. In the morning, Essie realized she couldn't tame Geralt's heart as she wanted a family, which was impossible for Geralt to grant, so their relationship didn't ensue further. Geralt and Jaskier jobs were done in Bremervoord, so they ventured off to find a new town that needed their services. The end. Stay tuned for more mind-blowing recaps on its mythical, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.